Welcome to the new episode of our podcast, Lead the Future, Change the Conversation. An unedited and honest conversation to create the future. I'm Arjan Visser, futurist and your host. And join me as I chat to my friend Benj Street on leadership, future, and peers. Benj, I got to know Benj as a leadership and innovation accelerator, a pioneer of what is possible when you embrace the emerging future. So, Benj, thank you for your time. Welcome in the podcast. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm doing very well, and yeah, grateful to be back on the podcast and chatting again about the future and um, what the future could be for me, for you, for hopefully everybody who's listening.
Yeah. The future, what's the first thing you think of when we talk about the future? And like I introduced you, the emerging future. What's the first thing comes to mind?
Uh, I don't know what comes to mind in the traditional way, but I always get a sense of excitement about the future. Um, Maybe that's some of my personality, but um, it's
Tell
a
me more.
feeling of
Tell me
uh,
more.
and anticipation and excitement about what could be and how I could be part of it. You know, be part of something great.
Yeah. Yeah. Anticipation. Anticipation is a word for me that triggers immediately the opposite thought of that's different than expectation or surprise. It is setting me up for something I have not yet received, seen,
Yeah,
or touched, but I'm looking forward to it. So when it appears in whatever shape or form, I will not miss it. Am I correct?
yeah, that's definitely how I think of it. Um, I, I still think that no matter what you anticipate, there's always an element of surprise with the future. Um, so it's maybe not in my mind, it's not quite the opposite, um, but it's definitely different and distinct from
Yeah. Yeah.
expectation, um, because I think anticipation. I don't think it's possible. Well, maybe it is. I haven't learned it yet. If it is possible to anticipate absolutely everything. I think part of, for me, thinking about the future is anticipating as far as I can, as wide as I can, as broad as I can. But there's always there's always limits to how much time I spend on that and how much of my time I spend on that future thing rather than on the present. And um, I think so. I've often been surprised by the future,
Mm. Yeah.
even when I've anticipated something,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
not just something, but anticipated in the broader sense.
So it is actually just the opposing part of expecting. It's a different way of positioning yourself to be able to be surprised and not miss it.
Yeah,
So, if
yeah, because I think for me that's really important, because if I was able to perfectly anticipate everything and not be surprised, it would be boring, because it would then be perfectly anticipated and known,
mm.
um, and predictable, perchance.
So how do you force yourself in anticipating for new things? How would you futurize yourself? Do you have a skill in that area um,
I
connected to your leadership development?
I definitely do, um, and I would say I'm learning to articulate it and to refine it from something that probably started as a natural tendency. Maybe natural's not the right word, but certainly unconscious.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't think it's very complicated in some ways. You know, we were chatting earlier, and you talked about um, opening a door and anticipating what's on the other side of the door, and in things that we do every single day as part of living and being, and part of our natural traveling through time that we are doing. Um, we anticipate that I'm going to be hungry at lunchtime, so we maybe make ourselves some lunch to be ready for that, in the simplest way. And I think what I have learned is that our brains are able to anticipate much, much further into the future than we naturally fall into. And so you have to create space to do it. You have to create time to do it. You have to, that those parts of our brains that seem to be best at it tend to be the bits that we don't give enough breathing space to. We really have to consciously decide to trust, to listen to, and to give space and time to breathe and to dream and to imagine. So there's a whole load of different ways to do that.
Yeah, and when I think of futurizing, and because that is actually, I think, the topic, like anticipation is a very important step in futurizing. And when I talk to leaders and we work on strategy for their business, it is the deal breaker. It is the game changer that we futurize first. And with strategy, having the end in mind, we use futurizing to get a real future end in mind. And then one of the most asked questions is, do you really believe we can time travel? And I believe we can. Actually, I believe without intention, or we do it all day. We travel most of the time backwards, and we call that memory. So we start looking in our archives. Did I do this before? How did it work? The approach of last time, was it successful? Then my ego kicks in and starts promoting it to do it again. So the time traveling thing we are all really used to do, but we use it to go backwards into memory. And I love it to just take people along and not go backwards, but go forwards. Like go towards the emerging future. So what are your experiences with that? Not just what the rubble is in the room when you throw in the word time traveling, but
The rubble in the room. I've not heard that expression. That's good.
it's in the future. I just made it up. No.
Yeah, no, it's good. New language. So I've experienced a lot of different things, imagining what different relationships could look like, what different bits of projects and work could look like, working with my own businesses and with clients to help them dream and imagine what could be different. So I think, maybe it's just my experience, but most of what I'd ever heard and described about this sort of time travel until a few years ago was, the futurizing, it's about goal setting. Like, let's make a 5-year plan and see what numbers we can hit, or how big we could become, or where we want to be. But for me, futurizing is quite different to that. It's actually using the creative side of your brain to imagine what it could actually look like.
Yeah.
Imagine who you could be working with, and if you want to go a level deeper, imagine what that working relationship is like. Imagine who you could be friends with, and how those relationships could help you create new ideas and new concepts that change the world around you. So I do it all the time, literally all the time. Sometimes I have to switch my brain off. I think it's one of those things that once you realize how accessible it is, it's hard to stop.
Yeah, you could escape to the future. I'm sometimes accused of, but
Yeah,
when I hear you, the first thing that comes to mind is that it's actually to just bring in some disruption. It is an essential skill, ability of anyone in leadership. And in leadership, to just say, I don't mean position, I mean leading yourself, knowing who you are, knowing where you want to go, knowing who you want to become in that sense. And all those things are impossible if you're not developing this really natural and intuitive skill of imagination, of all those things you just mentioned. So
I think. Yeah, sorry, finish.
So I think it's just to highlight it. It's not optional. If you, and we joke many times outside of the podcast, normally if you stop learning, you will be controlling other people.
Yeah.
So, and the only way to keep leading other people and not controlling them is learning, and learning of who you are, who you can become, where you are going will only work when you do time traveling forwards into the emerging future, embracing the emerging future, because
And
there are the focus points for growth of yourself and others.
I think, if you've ever watched Back to the Future, I know you have, but can't remember which one it is, where he goes forward in time and gets the results of all the
Yeah.
Races. I think what futurizing does is it allows you to go forward, imagine what it could be like, and bring back to the present language, ideas, a sense of what needs to change, what do I need to learn in advance in order to be able to go after that future that I've imagined. So, you were saying you've been accused sometimes of escaping to the future, and I think that's a real danger. But that's not what this is about. This is about the practice of futurizing and imagining it in a proactive, invested, it's work in a way to go and do it and harvest from the future, those things that you need to be able to communicate today to the people around you about where you're going and where they could go.
Yeah, absolutely. And is it an exercise? This is a bit of a rhetorical question, of course, fully intentional. Can you do it on your own, or do you need other people that can stand what you try to process?
It's an interesting question, because I think there's elements of it that you have to do on your own. I think nobody else can do it for you. I think my experience is other people can support and encourage you and help equip you or teach you some of the tools to imagine or to engage some of the creative side of your brain. But I think the value in peers and not doing it alone is when you do bring the language back from the future, and you start to try and describe what it could be like, the value is in having people who will listen to you and feedback honestly of whether you've gone down some rabbit hole that's complete nonsense, or whether actually what you're talking about resonates with who you are and where you're going.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah, that is an essential part of futurizing. Um, is it's not just seeing it, but also verbalizing it.
yeah.
And the time traveling, we already made the point. You have to go forwards as well. The same is with your language. Like most language we have is based on the recall of memory, and that will, well, just repeat the past or talk about the present. But the new language that is connected to the future, when you find that language, the language of tomorrow, then it, by speaking it, it creates the future. And our behavior is actually the connection between what we visualize and what we will have as a future. Um, and we have to find the words. We have to find the keys to speak that into existence, because the behavior follows what we talk about, what we think about, what we believe. So this seeing, verbalizing, and hearing it is the the development space of perspective. And I
And
have learned you need to have people around you that are not offended, are not confused, give you honest feedback about what you said, or even brutal feedback, without needing to know to understand. And that iterative process is starting based on that feedback. So, and I think it's old knowledge, but you need to be careful not to just do that with just anyone that you trust, but only with people who are prepared for it, because it is raw language and you can change it probably every day. Every time you speak about it, it's different. So that's
do
why
you have,
I love
do you
to
have
have
some
peers.
do you have some experiences of that working well or not so well?
Oh, definitely. Like when you've tried to find language to speak the future into being, don't do it with those who follow you and take you literally on your words, because you are finding the words yourself. So those people with all the good intentions start running based on what you said, and then when you change it the next day and the next week and the next month, they don't know where to run to, you know. So that's definitely an experience I have seen with experienced myself, but also seen with um, um, leaders in a business, in an organization. I've also seen many times that uh, examples, maybe from a classroom perspective, at school, if someone has a crazy idea and speaks about it, the, every kid in the room wants to stand up and be the next. You know, there is this excitement, there is this creativity, this imagination, this childlikeness, of course, in kids, where they stack upon each other like building bricks to create this crazy future innovative idea to experiment with. But when you are in a boardroom, if one has a crazy idea, all the other people want that person to sit down as soon as possible, which is a really like, okay, but this kills everything about future innovation, breakthrough. Um, so my experience is that you need to have a group of peers outside of your operational context to develop the language to a level that you believe it, you can repeat it, This is my future quo versus my status quo. And then with that language, you can go back to present it to those who would maybe offended normally, but now you can have your buy-in with them, and those will follow because now you know what to communicate. So it's a narrow path, but I truly believe that you need to have people around you, but it's a special group. Like the old language of Napoleon Hill was back in the 40s. You need to have a mastermind of people.
Yeah, that's definitely my experience.
Yeah. And I hear so many leaders who say, I have an amazing team around me who support me and give me honest feedback. Well, that's great, but that's not what we talk about. What we talk about is innovation, development, futurizing, the new things. And those people will be less amazing because they are not empowered by you verbalizing it in that circle. So, yeah, I say to any leader, and I've already defined leadership as that's if no one follows you, at least lead yourself.
Yeah.
Just find those peers. I think we can wrap up with that. Find your peer.
Yeah, definitely. That's my experience over the last few years. Find other people who want to discover their future alongside you, and
Yeah.
talk to them regularly.
Yeah.
Have them keep you honest about continuing to do it.
Regularly. So it's not to keep it top of mind. And so that then we are back to the one-liner: prioritize your personal development as a leader. Make futurizing a big part of it.
Yeah.
And find your voice.
I mean, I think it's that principle of like prioritizing it has to do with regularity. If you want to get physically fit, you can't go to the gym once a month and expect to see a difference. And I think it's the same with personal leadership development and growth. You can't expect to have a seminar every 6 months or an away day once a year or whatever it is. My experience is it's got to be sort of on a weekly frequency, having something regular in the diary that you carve out that space and time to work on your own development and growth, as you're just about to say. Find your voice and practice that voice. No different to want to learn to sing or run a marathon or whatever. It's that regular, by prioritizing, it's a regular prioritizing.
That absolutely. So I'll finish with the invitation to just sit in the mastermind. Use the link in the screen in the comments to just sit in as a guest and discover your peer mastermind this Friday, because it's all about you finding your voice amidst all the echoes out there. So, Benj, thank you for this great time. And I'm looking forward to our next podcast in probably a couple of weeks, and just take it from there. And from everyone who have been listening to it, just leave your comments, ask your questions, reach out. It's not a static process. So please join this conversation to lead the future. And bye for now. Bye, Benj.
Nice to see you. Bye.